Component 3 will demonstrate our monitoring and assessment approach in Chile. The component is led by the Chilean Ministry of Environment and will be demonstrating the uPcycle framework through the existing Lake Villarrica recovery plan and assessing opportunities for upscaling sustainable phosphorus management within national and transboundary policy context. So let me invite Linda May, one of our co-leads for Component 3. She has more than 47 years of experience as a freshwater ecologist. She studies the causes and effects of water quality problems in lakes, and currently her research includes eutrophication and recovery process in freshwater lakes, including the impacts of climate change and their mitigation. So I'll say it in Spanish and then you can come in, please, Linda. So en el componente 3, que es el que nos toca ver ahora, vamos a demostrar cómo el enfoque de seguimiento y evaluación en Chile. Entonces, este es el componente que va a ser nuestro piloto. Está liderado por el Ministerio de Medio Ambiente de Chile. Y en este piloto lo que queremos intentar demostrar es este marco de reciclaje de fósforo, digamos, a través del plan de recuperación del lago Villarrica que ya existe actualmente. Y vamos a evaluar oportunidades para ampliar la gestión sostenible de fósforo dentro del contexto de las políticas nacionales, pero también de los efectos transfronterizos. Una de nuestras co-líderes es Linda May. Ella tiene más de 47 años de experiencia como ecóloga de agua dulce. Estudia causas y efectos de problemas de calidad de agua en diferentes lagos y actualmente está trabajando en investigaciones de eutrofización y recuperación de lagos de agua dulce, incluyendo también efectos del cambio climático y su mitigación. So, welcome, Linda.
So we're on slide 1 now, and you should be able to see the presenter mode. So I'll just start. So uPcycle component 3, you've actually heard quite a lot about already, all the way through this meeting, because we went out for a visit a couple of weeks ago. Sergio has just covered the decontamination plan and everything we learned about that, and then you saw part of our visit in the video that was shown. And so I'm not going to go over all of that, but what I've learned over the years of being a lake ecologist and lake restoration is that you go and look at your lake. If it's a particular lake, if it's hundreds, you can't do that. But if it's a particular lake, they all tell their own story. And it's worth going and having a look right at the beginning to see if what people are saying to you is actually correct. And I have to say, for Lake Villarrica, I felt that there was a slightly different underlying story, which we'll be looking into later, but not in this talk. So we're component 3, part of what Brian showed in terms of the overall uPcycle project. And so it's demonstrating the uPcycle approach in Chile, scaling from basin to transboundary ecosystems. So while we're trying to understand Lake Villarrica and its problems, we also need to take in information that's coming through from all the other components and apply that to Lake Villarrica and to this transboundary systems. So one of the things you can see here, which is one of the things that troubled me, is that there's this very nasty algal bloom. You can see it's blue-green algae. You can see this nasty stuff that looks like paint here, but it's all contained within this bay. You look out a little bit further and the water's really quite clear. So the problem at Lake Villarrica is serious, but it's very localized in terms of where people come into contact with it. And here again, you can see it's along the coast or the shoreline here. Water's much clearer further out. So that's something we have to look into, is do we look at the lake as a whole, or do we look at parts of it and the impacts that phosphorus going into the lake is having? So the first part of this whole exercise is to put database together. and catalogue the data that we can find. And that's where we need everybody's help. We are starting to pull things together already. We're looking at publications. If you have publications or information on Lake Villarica particularly, we'd be grateful if you could send them through to us. It doesn't matter what language they're in, we can deal with that. But we really, really need some good data and to understand how this lake functions. So first of all, we'll produce some phosphorus emission baseline for Lake Villarica, which they've already done in the decontamination plan. But one of the things that Sergio mentioned this morning is they've been using the OECD models, which lots of us know about. The OECD models, they work for a population of lakes. They don't work for specific lakes terribly well. And the other thing you have to take into account is that when they developed those models, they took out anything that wasn't phosphorus limited, and they took out anything that had any color in the water to make them fit better. And so you can't just use them as they stand. We need to look at other ways of doing it. So we need those models to be able to forecast the effects of change and the socio-economic impacts of change, of course. So we'll be putting that all together into a virtual surveillance portal. That's how we'll deliver the outputs. And that portal has to be capable of assessing phosphorus emission reduction scenarios and also their impacts and benefits within the Lake Villarica Basin. So it'll have lots of information. We'll be providing training in the use of it. We haven't really scoped exactly what it will have in it at the moment. The training workshops that we're going to run, we'll be running particularly training workshops for the Chilean ministry staff. We're going to put together 2 virtual training workshops and associated training materials that we're going to share with everyone. The plan is to deliver training to at least 10 staff from Chilean Ministry of Environment or sister departments, and also, of course, to ensure that 50% participation from women to meet our EEDI objectives. And if you look to the left here, you can see a slightly different version of this accumulation of algal blooms, again with the clearer lake to the left. So we're going to have to look at this rather carefully. So we're going to identify at least 3 new opportunities for sector-specific emission reductions at the Lake Basin to national scale in Chile, holding awareness workshops, talking to relevant stakeholders. We've already done some of that in our original visit a couple of weeks ago. And we want to produce some targeted awareness raising materials for people and notes, videos, and those sorts of things. One of the things that I keep hearing mentioned are the sewage works. Another is the fish farms. And the other one is one of my very favorite subjects, septic tanks. And of course, we're all telling the stories that we've seen elsewhere. We're telling the stories that we read in the literature or even in the newspapers. It's really important that we make sure that those stories hold for this particular lake. And so we'll be looking into that in a little bit more detail. Once we've done that, we've taken in all the information we're getting from the rest of the project. We're going to publish a transition plan for Chile. So we'll compile and review and assess all the evidence to support the lake decontamination plan, look at it in a little bit more detail. We'll co-develop some recommendations with the stakeholders, and we'll be holding quarterly workshops, mostly online, to keep people involved and to get information from people. We've said that we'll survey at least 5 government departments on the monitoring and assessment approach, and we'll co-develop and publish this transition plan and share it across relevant government departments. So that's into the future here, but I'd like to draw your attention yet again to the image on the right, which shows quite clearly that these problems, these algal bloom problems, are very much in these areas where there are high populations, where the fish farms are and so on. And what I see from this image in my head is that they accumulate there. You get a puff of wind that circles around and it's just taking it out across the lake. And so what we really need to find out is how widespread, how big this problem is, and whether there are local solutions in particular areas that we need to focus on. So the Lake Villarica demonstration study, we're going to take some lessons learned from that and from everyone's experience of doing these sorts of things. And we're going to upscale it to the catchment that runs from Lake Villarica down to the Humboldt Current large marine ecosystem, so that we can get a larger scale view of it. And so we're doing kind of the opposite to what's happening in the rest of the project. We're starting with a focus on one site and then building up to the larger scale, where a lot of the other project will come and meet us in the middle, coming from the larger scale more to the site specific. So how can everyone help us? Well, we're seeking everybody's help, please, to help us bring together data. I mean, can you provide data for our Chilean case study, Lake Villarica? That's where we need to start, in a publication, a PhD thesis, somewhere on your computer, anything. We're thinking that we might have a sort of data hackathon of some sort, get everyone together to see what they've got. And then can you provide broader scale data to help scaling up from Lake Villarica to the Humboldt Current LME? We'd also look for people to be part of this cross-sector working group. There are lots of industries, lots of activities that produce phosphorus that may or may not get into the lake, and anyone who has any information on those would be very useful. It was extremely useful just visiting one of the fish farms while we were there, and also going to the sewage works. We collected a lot of information from that on how they work, because they don't all work the same way. And if you would like to be part of a community that hopefully will influence us to drive change in this sector, then we'd be very pleased to hear from you. So just please, if you can, help us make a difference, because we really need to clean up some of these systems at the large scale, but also at the local scale where all the impacts happen. So thank you very much, and I apologize for the technical issues at the beginning.
No worries, Linda. Thank you very much for that presentation.